Hi, everybody. How are you this evening? It's 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, and you know what that means. Tool talk. I've got lots of tool tips this evening. Julia is going to be joining me this evening, and we're going to talk about burnishers. So, we have got all kinds of good stuff to talk about this evening, and Julia is on here. So let me add Julia, and Helen is on here too. So let me just do this, and we're gonna go live with Julia. There we go. Let's see if we can go live with Helen too. Hi, Helen. How are you? Let's see.
Hello.
Hi there. Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I just got done tutoring.
Yeah.
So it's like now I can talk about tools, which is way better than tutoring, in my opinion. Actually, I like tutoring, but
Yeah.
I like talking about tools.
Let's see. I was going to add
Hi,
Helen
Nikki.
too, but I'm having a hard time getting her to add. So let me see if I can.
Hi, Rebecca. Oh, Nikki and Rebecca, I haven't seen either of you in so long. A couple of my former students.
It's not letting me add Helen. I don't know why. But
you had to do a thing. You had to go into a different room or something. I don't know. You knew.
No,
you did it
I had
last
it.
time.
Yeah, I know. And I was trying to. Oh, wait, here we go. Let's see.
Hi, Rebecca. I miss all my Missa peeps.
Oh my gosh.
Helen says, hold on.
Oh, okay. She can send me a thing to join. Yeah.
She can do the thing. I don't have my apron on. I'm sorry, guys.
I have mine.
Rushed in here.
I put mine on.
You have yours.
Do little metal fox apron.
Safety first. Cotton apron.
And my Peppy Tools Let the Good Times Roll rolling mill.
Nice.
Love it. Yeah. So yeah. So you want to do a little chat about burnishers?
I do have my mug though. I do have my Little Metal Fox's mug though.
Oh yeah, I've got my mug. Hydrate. It's that time of year.
Hydration, especially as warm as it's been.
I know, right? Things just taste better out of a fox mug. How are you? You doing good?
I'm good. When Helen proposed burnishers, I was like, burnishers? Yeah, I have a few. And then I came in my studio and looked for them, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I have 14. I have 14 different burnishers, and then probably if I looked closely, I could find a few more. Yes, and I wasn't even counting prong pushers as burnishers, but you're right, they are actually burnishers. So yes,
I've got so many. So yeah, I mean, everybody's usually familiar, especially once you start intro to jewelry, with your standard burnisher, right? You got them, and a lot of people don't realize that they come in assorted shapes and sizes and lengths and everything else. And
I like the really narrow one, I have to say.
Narrow one, and and I know that we've got, a few people that like Chris, who makes really beautiful burnishers that are very bespoke and gorgeous, and we love that. There's all kinds of things that people have made, and people sort of do interesting things with. One of the ones I know that Chris recently made is from Lion Punch Forge. Is one that gets in between like two bezels that are really super close, which is sometimes a real trick to do. So
kind of like the curved end of this guy is what I usually use.
So, but here's something that a lot of people don't realize about burnishers. That when you get them right fresh out of the pack, they are usually packed in like an axle grease with a wax paper coating, or a type of coating that wraps around it to keep it from rusting while it's sitting there doing nothing in storage or shipping.
Or traveling from China in a shipping container over the ocean.
Through saltwater infested waters. Salt infested waters. But the thing about these is that the thing that most people don't realize is that when you unwrap it, it's not always ready to use, right? So what you have to do once you sort of wipe off the oil. You don't want to like wash it off with water, because that could make it worse and cause rusting inside the handle part, which can be problematic. But what you want to do is just wipe it down really good, and then start with your sandpaper and sand if you have any pits or any marks or notches or on the edges as well as on the flat. I usually leave most of the back side of mine in sort of a sanded state back here, but I will put a fine polish, take it all the way up to a high polish on the surface, down the sides, and usually across the back of the tip as well, because those are the active parts of the burnisher that I'm using to smooth the burnisher down and to shine it up. And it's kind of like a beautiful planishing hammer. If your hammer has texture on it, if your hammer has, nooks and crannies and, knocks in it, every piece of metal that you hit with that hammer is going to impress with those.
Right. It's going to have all those same marks. So
right.
If you don't want a mark, as Charles Luton Brain says, don't put marks of process on your work unless you want them there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, any of your planishing hammers, are usually bright and shiny and beautiful because that's what you want your metal to look like after you hit it. And the same thing is absolutely true with burnishers. You want to get a really nice shiny surface on that because you're trying to smooth it down and shine it up. You don't want to create more work for yourself. So if your burnisher is all, screwed up, then your bezel is going to take more work because you're scratching into your bezel anytime you have a rough edge on your burnisher. And I've seen people that have had, they're using the ones at the school and it may not be maintained or, whatever. And somebody's got like
they were used for something. They were used to open
a can,
open cans or, unscrew things. And so then they get little nicks in the edge.
Yeah. And I've seen people do that with like going to open the liver of sulfur with their burnisher. And I'm like,
you're like, no, it's a priceless, precious tool.
Please don't do that. Well, it's, this is my workhorse, the one that I'm using. These two are the ones that I'm using the most. But, I always want to find a burnisher that like fits my hand comfortably.
Right.
So that it's like in my hand like that.
I love your thing about how to use a burnisher.
To peel the potato?
Peel the potato. I use that. I tell that to my students all the time. Peel the potato.
In small sections at a time.
In small sections. So you're holding really high up on the burnisher. So you're like,
well, that way you've got more control.
I'm not even holding the whole handle. Like I've got a lot of handles sticking out the back of my hand.
Oh yeah, me too. So so the thing that people don't usually do, they're like trying to like burnish on a big surface or doing this bit and they're going, and I'm like, that's not going to do anything. You're trying to move some metal. So if you take the burnisher, and I usually have mine like this, right after I've sort of pushed it all down, I'll start to peel the potato technique. And with that, I'm usually pinching the bezel between my thumb and my burnisher. And this, if you've ever grown up in the South and had a mother that was trying to teach you what not to do when you were 4, you probably know how hard that pinch hurts. So, how much strength is right there in her between her thumb and her index finger. But
oh my God,
just right here is kind of what you're doing, or working around, in small sections at a time, and that keeps you from like across the top of the stone, cracking the top of the stone.
There is no sadness and there are no tears. Like you finished the whole thing and you put that stone in there and you're burnishing it down and you're tired and you start to make your stroke be longer. It should be no more. You always say no more than 1/4 of an inch.
Yeah, just and real small.
Just like reaming on it and then right across the top of the stone. And now, you're done. So
work in small sections at a time as you're pulling it down over your stone. And to get those little, the little ripples out of the burnisher. But then I'll go back and sort of start smoothing it down too. But that working in small sections at a time when you're trying to really move that metal and you're putting a lot of force on it is way better than trying to sort of like around the top, because that doesn't work. Everybody's like, I can't get it knocked down all the way. Well, that's why. Anyway, but there are other burnishers. Let me
say one more thing about these though.
Sure.
if you're trying to apply a lot of force,
Mm-hmm.
the narrower the piece that you're applying the force with, the more force you're going to apply.
Yeah.
Which is good if you have good control, because you can really take the narrow edge of this and get good control. If you don't
That's
have
what
good
I'm usually
control,
doing.
you'll just dig a big gouge in it. So,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm usually using, when I'm pulling down the burnish, or pulling down the bezel over the stone, I'm usually like pulling it right against that slick,
Right
sharp
on the
edge.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
But it's not
peeling
sharp. It's not sharp. I think that's an important point.
But
This
the
is not
point.
a knife.
Right.
This area has to be, you should be able to touch this and push on this with your finger as hard as you want, and it's not going to cut you, because it's shined too. It needs to be a nice polish on this.
Yes.
Because I would constantly say to the folks at the Pratt in particular, or any school where they've been used hard and put away wet, you know, take a little time and you know, do yourself and your neighbor a favor and recondition the burnisher a little bit, and spend a little bit of time with a sanding stick and sand out the nicks. If there are nicks, sand those out, and then, you know, burnish it, polish it, so it's got a nice high time.
Yeah, I usually use Zam when I'm polishing steel, and it just
Fabulister too.
Fabulister and Zam do a great job. Just if you don't have like a buffing unit in your studio, use like a real nice firm felt. Yeah, like a wool felt.
I mean, you can do it by hand too. You can just put,
sure.
you know, wrap leather around a stick, and then you put the polishing compound on the leather.
Absolutely.
You know?
That works great.
Flex shaft or a buffing wheel to use polishing compounds.
Absolutely,
so,
that
anyway,
works great.
Saying, there are more burnishers to go.
Well, and you were just saying knife, and I'm like, butter knives are great. I've seen people, a guy that turned like an oyster knife into a burnisher, and it's like the perfect thing. It's like oyster knives are like the perfect shape and shiny and great for things like that too.
You just have to make sure you get the edge knocked down.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the edge on those isn't really too sharp. It's like a big butter knife.
True,
you know?
true. Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's more a prying tool than a cutting tool.
Yeah, but those make pretty good burnishers too. But I've used all kinds of things, and I've got one of the other things you'll see a lot in with the burnishers, just for sale, would be something like the Agate Burnishers. And these two I got from Rio. And, you know, this is
the same too.
The same too, yeah. These two are fantastic. And this is really kind of a traditional agate burnisher, where you've got
the bamboo handle.
The bamboo handle, and it's like old paintbrush. So if you have an old paintbrush and you go to one of those tourist shops where they have like bins of polished agate, pick one up, jam it in an old paintbrush with some hot glue, and you've got yourself a brilliant agate burnisher. And I love these. The thing that can happen to these though is that sometimes you have to be careful. You don't want to drop them or chip them, because you don't want to end up with a nick in them. So what I usually do is cork it.
Good idea.
I'll just drill a hole, and I just corked that one, because this is the second one. I dropped one on a tile floor and it just shattered it. So however, if you go to Amazon and you look up Agate Burnisher, there are these beautiful
I know,
polished,
you told me about this.
I know, right? And they're like they're carnelian and agate, and it's like they're just beautiful. And these things are fantastic because they just fit in your hand. But look at that. They're just beautiful pieces. You know, I mean, talk about a beautiful tool. Where's Chris from Lion Punch when you want to talk about a beautiful tool? So this,
and this was a package. You turned me on to this. These
like five
that I have were a package. They all came together, and they were like $13 on Amazon.
Yeah, right.
So, and they were all different sizes. Mine are a little bit different shapes and sizes from yours, because I think they're all, you know, like each package is a little bit different.
They're all unique. Yeah. They're all unique. Every package I've seen of them is unique, because they're all made out of agate. The importance too, I want to mention about the agate burnishers, is that if you're working with stones that are agate, or, you know, softer stones like that, they're great for doing bezels, because your stone that you're setting isn't any softer than the stone or the material that you're setting with. So you run much less of a risk of like scratching the stone or damaging the stone, because what you're setting it with is the same hardness as the stone that you're setting. Yeah. So
I love
it's
this one.
really kind of nice. Yeah. They're just beautiful, aren't they? Yeah.
I know. This
It's
one's
a
my favorite.
pleasure to work with Agate Burnishers. Um, a few years ago, there's a wonderful artist and toolmaker here in the Seattle Northwest Olympia area, Bill Dawson. And
Such a sweet person too.
yes,
He's an amazing artist and an amazing tool maker and a really, really lovely guy.
totally cool guy. And he teaches a lot in the area as well. And he had a selection of his tools at Danica Design here in Seattle. And every time I was teaching over at Danica, I would see Bill's tools in the case, and I lusted after this thing for I don't know how long. And I was teaching there my birthday weekend, and I went, it's mine. So the beautiful thing about this is the handle is all hand carved, and it's got
Aw.
these beautiful little brad tacks in there. But this is actually just a carnelian bead that is like a tooth-shaped bead, but it feels so good in your hand. And I want to encourage people who are like, I have to buy a burnisher from the jewelry place. It's like, make one. Make a beautiful
Yes.
burnisher that's like fits your hand and
Yes.
feels
Yes.
good. You know, I mean, I love this thing. I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
Um,
I was just putting together the supply list for the basic. I'm going to do a basic bezel setting class coming up in May, and so I
Great.
was just putting together the tool list for that, and I was going through and trying to find stuff on Amazon. On Rio to because we always try to give people the stock numbers and whatnot, and I was like, ooh, I really don't want to put in a particular burnisher
Yeah.
because they're sort of everybody, it isn't a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Like people's hands are different sizes, and your grip is different, and so it's like I didn't want to, because I know people get very specific about those tool lists, and they see the tool list and they think that that's the
Yeah.
tool you have to have, and
Yeah.
I'm like, no. So I decided I'm going to just say
Here's some
agate
options.
and antler and metal and all
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
curved or straight. Like, get one that you think is going to work for you, or don't get one at all, and we'll talk about them in the class. Right?
Absolutely. Well, and Antler is a great solution too. And Chris at Lion Punch Forge, we have a
Chris has
discount.
got such beautiful ones. I
The
just have
Antler,
a chunk of antler.
oh my gosh, his Antler burnishers are just, they're they're sustainably harvest, and it's recycling old metal, old tools and knobs and things
Cabinet
like that.
knobs, yeah.
Yeah, they're just absolutely spectacular and beautifully made.
These were just some little pieces of antler. I think I bought these, when I was up in Alberta visiting Chris Harse, who's a lovely metal worker from the Calgary area. And so I went to visit her before, because we were heading up to Red Deer to teach, and we were out at one of the farmers markets there, and somebody had like a bucket of, they were selling
Antler
things
tips.
that were antler related, and they had
Antler
a bucket
points.
of antler tips.
Yeah.
So I kind of dug through and found a couple that I thought were a good size, because you want one that's, I like the curve. The curve is nice because it sort of fits in my hand.
Yeah.
This one is a good size for me, but I kind of got some that were a little bigger, because sometimes I have bigger people in my class and sometimes I have smaller people. So
yeah. And those
I like
are always nice.
options.
Well, and in terms of like alternative materials for burnishers, because keep in mind this has been done for like 10,000 years.
Oh, yeah. This is the paleo burnisher.
Exactly, the paleo burnisher.
The paleo burnisher.
And I mean anything that's like, especially if you're working with like really soft stones, stuff like Antler
turquoise
is great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You won't scratch it.
But even like I'll reshape sometimes like bamboo chopsticks as a pusher as well as a sort of a burnisher. This is actually one of my favorite setting tools. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite setting tools, because when I'm pushing down the bezel over the stone, especially if it's a bigger one, I love the eraser on the end because it conforms to the piece. And then once it starts getting a little stiffer, I'll switch over to the square end of the pencil and just push it over with the pencil. And the pencil works great to start compressing. So I usually am starting with like a pencil or something like a chopstick.
Using a bezel pusher.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't ever use bezel pushers. I don't ever use bezel pushers.
Yeah, because the bezel pushers, if you know what you're doing, it's great, but you can make marks in your bezel, and so
with rockers and pushers, I've seen so many, especially beginning students, who will grab it right out of the box, and it has a sharp, like the bezel pushers sometimes will have a really sharp edge, and then you end up with all these like these bites.
Oh, they're always sharp. No, they're
in
always
the bezel.
sharp.
And so
You
you've
have
got
to
to
dress them.
treat these things.
Yeah,
You got to
you
roll
have to
them
dress
down.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got to dress them. I always tell
absolutely.
my students you have to dress them.
Right.
And they're always, half a dozen of the ones at the Pratt are completely undressed and
Right.
sharp. I mean, sharp enough to cut with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's some
The edge
that
on,
we've worked
on some
on
of them
and
is,
we've dressed, we've fixed and stuff. So, but yeah, this is just a toothbrush. Oh, that's a bone folder that you have. This was just the handle off of the toothbrush. I particularly like this one because it has the toucans on it. It's a little cheerful,
I love that.
but I just cut the head off and then rounded it a little bit. And
Yeah, that's great for a bezel
works
pusher.
really well as a bezel pusher. Exactly.
Yeah, one of the other reasons I like the bone folders, and these you can usually find in most art supply stores and fabric stores a lot of times, it's usually used to like mark and fold paper without cutting it. And so a lot of bookmakers will use these, for bookbinding, or paper artists will use this a lot for scoring and embossing. But one of the reasons, and I come from a printmaking background, so this for me, I've always had them around. But I find that for what I do with my mixed media stuff, this is a great ivory substitute. But the nice thing is, if I need a burnisher that's a particular shape or size, I can saw this and change the shape of this very easily to be what I need it to be. Yeah.
Right. And they're cheap enough that you can just buy another one, right?
Right. Absolutely.
You have your sacrificial bone folder.
Right. One of my other go-tos as my burnisher, and I use this a lot, especially with smaller stones, is a needle. And this is like a tapestry needle. And I usually will go to Joann's and just get a pack of craft needles that has like tapestry, embroidery, and the bigger like darning needles and things like that don't have necessarily a really sharp point on the end. But the cool thing about these is that they are a really good tool hardened steel. And if you put them into a handle like a pin vise or into something like an engraving handle, they are great for tiny little bezels and burnishing up smaller things. I'll use them for doing things like flush setting, tube setting, and real small stuff where I've got to really get in there. And those work fantastic. And I'll also use old burrs that I have redressed on the end that are just old broken dull burrs. And I'll pop off the burr on the end and take that down to a point that I like for burnishing and setting stones. But, it's all about kind of adapting those tools or finding tools in unusual places, like you said, but I love this little stylus. It's a burnisher that's usually used for like lettre set. Yeah. But X-Acto makes one that's used as the old letter transfers for like vinyl letters, and it has like all these little different points that come with it. And this is fantastic. It actually comes with like a burnisher little Scooby-Doo in there. So I mean, there are dental tools that make great little burnishers, and you can always take a couple of old files and heat them up and file them down, and make your own.
The main thing for making your own is that you spend the time to get a high polish on it. So this one, this is a Kumbu Burnisher that I made. So this end, you can see, is a screwdriver. This is a long shank. It's designed to go into like a drill or something.
Oh yeah.
So this was the butt end because I wanted something long enough that I could get. Because for Kumbu, you want it to be your hand far enough away that you're not hurting your hand. But this was the butt end that fits into the screwdriver, and so this I just rounded and smoothed, and then tried to get got a really. You can't see it. I'm sorry, you can't see it very well, but it's got a really beautiful high polish on it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. That's lovely. Yeah, and I've always used like agate burnishers for Kumbu.
Yes, always. The agate burnishers work great. The trick with the agate burnishers is don't quench them. Right.
That's true.
You can break them. Well, so with a steel burnisher, you can quench it.
Yeah, and I have to say, from a tip from a friend, because I always pull out my pencil and I'm doing my demos with that. But my friend Tori is awesome, and she does some of the most beautiful bezels I've ever seen anybody do. I mean, they are always perfect. And and it's because she takes the time to do the finishing on the burnisher, and she's using, and there's a point to this, but what she's using to knock her bezel down and get it so tight and beautiful around her stone, an X-Acto and a Sharpie. And a Sharpie. So yeah, a Sharpie and a mallet. And so she'll sit there and just like boop, 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 and like use it as a chasing tool all the way around the top of her bezel. And it is absolutely beautiful every single time. So this is her go-to for her bezels.
I love your beautiful, I love your cute little rawhide, tiny little baby rawhide mallet. That is just precious.
Guy. This is really handy. I love that guy. And Chris makes
I have a little plastic one that's about the same size. It has a plastic head that I made in a class with Roger Horner.
Right.
So it's precious to me because I made it too.
And then Chris from Lion Punch has the purple punch, which is purple heart punch, which is also a great, beautiful tool. But my point is, and I was watching this with on Adam Savage on his Maker YouTube channel, and he said it best, better than anybody I've ever heard say it. But he was talking about, people that are doing remaking props. They're like there's a whole community out there, people that does like redoing props for things, for like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Henry Jones's
props.
Yes, like movie props. And so he was demonstrating one of his pieces that was just gorgeous, and he had done a book of Henry Jones's Grail diary, and so he was talking about putting it together, and he said a lot of crafters and makers out there will do pieces that are beautiful, and they'll take it, like 90% of the way, and it's good enough. It looks good and it works and everything else. And he said, but it's that last 10% that you really have to like work at and put the energy into to make it really sing. And he said, and this thing that he was working on was about at 95%. And he said, the thing is about that 10% or that last 5%, it can take you way longer than the other 90%, because that 5% is all about perfecting the detail and making it sing. And that's exactly true about bezels. That is so, so true about bezels. So I see people that are just like, yep, it's done. Yay, it's in there. It's not coming out. But it's about finishing it. And that finishing part is what takes the longest. So, you can have, the best burnishers in the world, but until you are, really understanding how to get like the top of the bezel dressed after you've set the stone and to get it polished and get all the waves out, and, that's when it starts looking, amazing, and it really starts to sing. And having somebody that can teach you those, the tricks to that, not just the, learning how to do a bezel you can do in one day. You can learn how to do a bezel that fast, but it's really about the finishing.
There's always room to improve. There's always room to practice and improve.
Yeah.
And so I will teach you in the basic bezel class, I will teach you the basics of how to put a bezel together. But the only way you will get to the point where your bezels will, if you look at them up close and you can see the curve is perfect all the way around and the shine is perfect all the way around, is if you spend the time to practice doing that.
And practice, yeah. So it really is about practice. And I think it's interesting. I joke, usually in the intro class, because we're always teaching people how to set bezels in the intro class. You've learned how to do a ring. You solder a ring, and then you solder a ring that fits around a stone, and then you shape it. And it's assumed, I think, by students that since you're learning that in an intro class, that it's easy.
Right.
No.
Not so much.
And the basics of the bezel is easy to understand how it works. But I gotta tell you, man, bezels are freaking hard. There are a lot of other stone settings that aren't nearly as hard as bezels are.
The other piece about bezels is the stones are usually relatively inexpensive.
Right.
And so you can get a lot of color bang for your buck
Right.
in a cabochon. And
True.
so if you're just starting out, it's like, oh, I can get a lot of big color pop for this. But you're absolutely right that the finishing a bezel well takes some skill and actually takes some learning to get there, and so
some
it
practice.
is a bit of a
and there's so many people that have great tips for getting that bezel to just pop and make it look great. Sometimes I'm using a hammer handpiece, sometimes I'm using an engraver. It just really depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes it's about the pumice wheels, but there's so many different things that you can use. But starting with good burnishers, and I've used all kinds of things for burnishers. Oh, and here's a tip for burnishers for people that are doing softer stones like opals. A lot of people that work with opals actually will take like a gold bezel and solder it onto their steel burnisher because the gold won't scratch the opals.
So they basically solder a layer
Strip
of gold onto the interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good idea.
That's the trick for opals. And people that do a lot of opals know that. It's just, kind of a given. But yeah, it's, and you could do that onto, a lot of them will do that onto like a steel burnisher when they're making their own. But you could do that onto something like, a piece of brass or something, or whatever. But yeah, it's something that like the little tip is usually using something like a piece of bezel strip, to coat their burnisher. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Are you gonna do a gold bezels
Gold
class?
bezels? Not
we had somebody
right
ask
away.
about that.
True, yeah. So we do have our gold add-on classes, or adding gold series that we're going to be doing. And I know you've got Kumbu, and we've got gold fill, and we've got and so a lot of the gold bezels are the same as silver bezels. It's not a big trick, but it's about working with gold. It's not so much about the bezel itself.
Right. It's
and
about
understanding what gold is.
Because gold solders very differently from silver.
Yeah, it's a lot more cooperative than everybody else. But it's you're paying the price.
Again,
you're paying the price for its cooperation.
You are paying the price for its cooperation. It's like silver and copper are actually not the easiest metals to solder in many ways,
especially
but
brass.
We start with them because they're cheaper.
Yeah.
So in some ways that's good, but it does mean that the learning curve is steep for people. Just like making bezels, it's a bit steep to get a good bezel.
Yeah, indeed. Well, and it's like people that I know that are working with brass and copper and those materials, and they're really good at it. And I'm like, well, make the jump to like gold fill because you're already used to working with brass, and that's brass on the inside and gold on the outside. You're halfway there. But
more than halfway.
Yeah.
More than halfway there.
Yeah. So but there's lots of solutions for gold. But we've got I'm going to be doing gold overlay and add-ons with things like gold dust. So
you're doing solder inlay too, I think, coming up.
Yeah, going to be doing a solder inlay as well coming up in July. We just got the Chris Anderson from Lion Punch Forge and I are going to be doing a texturing class coming up using the Lion Punch Forge engraver adapter.
That just went live today, didn't it? So
people
can actually sign up for that one.
Yeah.
And you should do that, people, if you're interested in that class, because Jennifer and Chris are co-teaching it. And so you get a lot of teacher bang for your buck. And I think because Chris is really popular and Jennifer is really popular, that class is very likely to sell out quickly. So if you're interested.
Well, and the thing is too, again, making your own tools. And so a lot of the tools we can, he's got a lot of solutions that are adaptations of other tools you can use for texture. But the trick is making your own tools that can be used in the Lion Punch Forge adapter. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about. So it's great for that. Chris is an amazing tool maker. And having an opportunity, yes, he is. He's just, you know.
You will not be bored. You will never be bored in a class where Jennifer and Chris are on board, as it were.
It's true. It's true. We do have a good time. But he is such an amazing tool maker. And having made things like the Haymaker saw, the Lion's Claw soldering tool, the Lion Punch Forge graver adapter. I mean, he is just, a consummate tool maker. And being able to be in a class with him where he's showing you how to make tools, you're talking to somebody who's making tools for artists. So, and he makes them in an artful way. So,
I think he makes them in his sleep, right? I don't think his brain ever turns off. I think it's like, it's always going, and he's always coming up with a new idea. Yeah,
they're trying to find new ways. Trying to find new ways to adapt them. Yeah. So
he was in my Cuban chain class, and we had fun talking about like solving the problem of how to cut oval links in the jump ring cutter, which is one of the things I'm going to be talking about in my jump ring cutters demystified class, which is also coming up. So we're going to talk about how to get the most out of your jump ring cutter, because a lot of people have them, but then they are a little scared of them, or they don't.
Well, they look like a Barbie like log saw.
I know. Yeah, they're.
It looks like it should be in Barbie's,
dungeon,
timber mill.
Timber mill. Barbie's a timber mill. Yeah. So they can be, it's a rotary power tool, and it's a little tiny mini circular saw. So yeah, people are right to be cautious, but there's a difference between educated and informed caution and panicked fear. So we want to dispel the panicked fear so that you can use your educated caution and cut all your rings, because it just makes your life so much easier to be able to cut the rings. And if you're making something like Cuban chain, it's so much nicer to be able to cut the rings with a tool rather than have to cut them
it's so much more economical. If you're making your own jump rings versus buying jump rings that are made, sometimes it really is an advantage to being able to make what you need rather than.
For me as a chain maker, it's huge, right? Because they're just, even though now there are a lot more ring sizes available than there were when I started, there still are not all ring sizes you need. Is that Simon Dog?
It is. He's here. Come on. There she is.
Simon the Wonder Dog.
There he is. Yeah, Simon the Wonder Dog. Yes, AJ is teaching a class down the hall right now, and he's Simon's favorite person in the world.
So, after you and Jason.
Yeah, he's like I don't know.
Really? You might. AJ might actually.
He's like a teenage girl at a BTS concert when AJ appears. So it's like.
Oh, that's so cool, right? But anyway, so that's coming up. And then you're doing a Burrs demystified class. So I just finished files demystified, and I was like, there are times when their file won't get in the place where you need to go, and then that is when you need to move to Burrs.
Yeah.
Because those
funny. It's funny. I'm really glad I sat in on the files class, and it was amazing. I learned a lot about files, so I really appreciate that. But it's like I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it in terms of my burrs, and I'm like, I could tell you all that about burrs, but I was really, I'm like, files, I don't know. I always use my burrs. But a lot of people are completely, perplexed about burrs. So I really wanted to have a class that really...
I'm going to take your class.
Great.
Burrs are not my strength.
Yeah. And one other little announcement that we had today is we have somebody new that's going to be joining the Little Fox family that's going to be teaching, and that is
Jan Smith,
who's going to be teaching
enameling. And her enamel work is so amazing, and she's such a dear person. I've known her for years. I met her through the Seattle Metals Guild when she was living down here in Seattle. She's back living in Canada now on Salt Spring Island, and is very active in the thanks, Simon. Is very active in the Vancouver kind of Victoria metals scene out there, but we don't get to see her that often down here. Like the snag conferences, I've seen her at a couple of the snag conferences, but she's
especially over the last year we haven't seen her. She's trapped in Canada.
She's trapped in Canada, literally trapped, like literally cannot leave the island practically. I mean, it's a little, not quite that bad, but she was telling us today that she can't go to Vancouver. She can go to Victoria, but she's not allowed to go to Vancouver.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's excited about she's going to do a sort of setting up your enameling, setting up for enameling, like what do you need? Like what kind of kiln do you need? And do you need sifters? And, like she's going to demystify all of that enameling paraphernalia, right? It's enameling paraphernalia demystified by somebody who's been doing this for decades and really, really knows her stuff.
Yeah.
So
and she's going to be speaking. She's going to be doing a presentation for the Enamel Society as well.
Oh, she's teaching like 2 classes for them, I think.
Yeah, she is. So first of all, follow Jan Smith because she's an amazing enamelist, and I'm sure Helen can add that to our the chat there. And she does, wonderful. Her sgraffito is just beautiful.
And
She's a consummate artist.
She really is.
She
So
does
check
that
out her
extra,
stuff.
that last 5%. She's always does that last 5%.
Yeah. So I'm really excited because we've had so many people asking about, adding color to metal and what we can do. And we've been looking for somebody that's a great fit. And she's a great fit for Little Metal Foxes, and is going to be bringing a whole bunch of great stuff. So we're real excited about that. So you can look for her classes the end of May and into June. She's going to be starting. So yeah, so we're excited about that. So yeah, but that's all I got for tonight.
That's enough.
That's tool tips for tonight.
We covered a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. I'll have to interview Jan before I'll interview Jan here on Tool Tip Tuesday, coming up, and see what she's got, tool tips. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure she's a wealth of information.
Absolutely. Gosh. Well, if you don't have some burnishers, go get some. If you don't have burnishers, you can make some. Go make some burnishers, and look around. I mean, if you've got some big old nails, or you've got some, go to Joann Fabrics and kind of look around and see what you can use as a burnisher. They've got some great stuff. So, but yeah, polish them up, make them shiny, make them look great, have some fun, and just keep practicing, right?
Right. Practice.
And take the bezels class.
and take the bezels class, and we'll talk about
Great. So yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us. We'll see you later. Bye.